So what factors really matter in making something a world-class software organization? I've kind of bought into this idea published in the book Discipline of Market Leaders, that there are 3 value dimensions, and that you can excel, that really the best companies tend to excel in one area and to do satisfactorily in the other 2 areas. And those 3 areas are operations, that is focusing on efficiency, doing things with as little effort, as predictably, and as much under control as possible. Or they excel in product leadership, that is creating really technically innovative solutions that are admired, that push the state of the art, and that kind of thing. Or they excel in customer intimacy, that is they get up close and personal with their customers and really nail the customer's needs better than anybody else is. And in the software industry, basically things like CMM are aimed at the first area, operational efficiency. And I think that's really why they get criticized. That gets criticized some of the time, is because in the software product space, in the internet space, and so on, I don't know that operational efficiency is the main success driver. Product leadership, I personally would say Microsoft in the 90s, that was their focus. I don't think it was customer intimacy. It certainly wasn't operations. I think it was technical innovation and technical leadership. In that same time frame, I would offer Intuit as an example of customer intimacy. Intuit is just with TurboTax, and Quicken was just doing an amazing job of figuring out what their customers wanted. And the software lacked a lot of polish, but it did the things that the customers wanted it to do, and so it would be an example of that. It's interesting to look at the NASA Software Engineering Lab, often described as one of the leading software organizations in the world. The first organization to be awarded the IEEE Software Process Achievement Award. A very, very process-oriented organization. And if you look at their list of top 10 do's that they publish in their recommended approach to software development, the top 10 do's are amazingly similar to what you would find at a Google or a Microsoft, and you wouldn't necessarily expect to find these in a heavily process-oriented organization. In particular, empower project personnel, minimize bureaucracy, take periodic snapshots of project health, and replan when necessary. That was published in the early 90s, long before a notion of rolling wave planning or the agile notion of monthly iterations or that kind of thing. Foster a team spirit. Start the project with a small senior staff. I think it's fascinating that this leading organization, on top of having an extreme process orientation, also has a very strong personnel orientation. Boeing is also kind of an interesting one. I guess I would hold out Boeing, at least at times, as another example of a world-class software organization. On the 777 project, for example, I think there's a great story there where they actually had a 5-year schedule for the airplane and also for the software. And 18 months into the project, they had been using some quantitative tracking measures, and they concluded that if they continued on that course, they were going to be about 5% over. And so 18 months into a 60-month schedule, they trimmed some functionality and added testing resources, which is where they saw the bottleneck, and ended up delivering the software on time, several million lines of safety-critical code on time. And part of me looks at that and says, well, gosh, if you're only 18 months, a year and a half into a 5-year schedule, and you take corrective action, and you can't help but be successful. But the other part of me says, yeah, but other companies violate that practice every day. They won't admit that they're behind until the 5 years has come and gone, and then they'll finally admit they're going to be late. So we've got to give them credit for actually taking corrective action sooner. It's not just, oh yeah, of course that worked. It's, oh yeah, of course that worked, and we ought to do that, because a lot of companies don't. At Boeing, they had one of these phrases that was like the do the right thing phrase at Microsoft. If you can't find the time to do it right, where are you going to find the time to do it over? And the focus here was very much on make sure that you get good quality the first time. Now, the current 787 project, I see people smirking, and so maybe that lesson got unlearned. But in the time I was at Boeing, that phrase had the same sort of almost mystical power that do the right thing did at Microsoft, which was basically a wake-up call. Make sure you're not taking some short-sighted shortcut. Symantec is the last organization I'm going to talk about tonight. Symantec is a really interesting company in that they've been a successful player in a field dominated by Microsoft, and I think that they have carved out a pretty innovative space in terms of their practices. And what's interesting to me is the number of really novel practices that you see only at Symantec. They have this notion of what they call UFOs, or uncommitted features of opportunity. And an uncommitted feature of opportunity is basically something where everybody gets their assigned workload, and if somebody finishes their work early, ahead of schedule, the reward they get for that is they get to work on an uncommitted feature of opportunity, or a UFO. And the uncommitted features of opportunity, the UFOs are features where they can't quite make the business case to justify officially putting in the release, but it's kind of cool and they like to put it in the release. So there's some organizational cachet that goes along with having shipped a UFO. If you're a developer who actually shipped a UFO, that's a cool thing in that company. But to me, it's interesting that the reward for getting your work done is the opportunity to do more work. And so that's a pretty good trick. They have some very interesting quantitative approaches. I've only seen this at 2 companies, with Symantec being one, where when they're talking about change orders and the sales staff comes in and says, hey, we've got this new feature, we really have to get this into the release. And the development staff comes back and says, and this is the typical part that a lot of companies do, the development staff comes back and says, okay, that's going to be an extra $250,000 and slip the schedule by a week. That part's not uncommon. What's uncommon is the sales staff, in order to even propose the new feature, has to also sign up for increases in its sales quotas. So it's not this unbalanced relationship you see in most companies where the sales staff can promote all kinds of very soft ideas with a very soft statement of benefits and bury the project with changes. Meanwhile, the technical staff has to incur real increases in scope and real increases in effort and schedule. It's more of a balanced approach where the technical staff has an impact, but the sales staff has to sign up for an impact as well. So they have to sign up for an increase in sales projections, so a numeric increase or an increase in sales quotas. And I've only seen that.
So the classic, but that's only good for one customer, actually has numerical value there, where they have to say, well, no, actually 20% of the people will like this, and we can make more sales. They have to sort of find a population that'll care.
Right, and so they actually have to say if this project was justified on a sales projection of 50,000 units in the first 6 months, they might have to increase their sales projection to 55,000 units or something like that. So it basically forces them to be quantitative about, not just, oh, this would be cool, and somebody said at a conference said they would like it, but we were actually, as a sales organization, are willing to get behind this and think it's important.